Welcome everyone to this session, which is a topic that is close to my heart as a member of the LGBTQIA community, and we should talk about alphabet soup at some point today. So I live in New York, as I shared in my keynote earlier, and I have a partner of 20 years, and I've been out since I was 22, and I'm somewhere in the 40s. Somewhere in the 40s. And I shared my story of being closeted and coming out and all that that meant. So I'd love to hear, first of all, introduce yourselves, maybe talk about briefly about your work with LGBT advocacy, how it dovetails with your business. And then I always like to start with a personal question, which is like your own, finding your voice story and being out. And maybe you can share with the audience, like take us back to that moment quickly and tell us like what that was like. Right? Yeah.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Monish Malhotra. So very quickly, I grew up in Delhi. I was born here, and as we all know, wait for what is about to drop. So yeah. So we all know it's not easy being different in any way possible. But it's all the way slightly more difficult when you identify yourself as queer. Because before even you start fighting with others, or even try and explain it to the rest of the world, there's a lot of thinking that goes inside your own head, your own body. Because it's just not a simple surface. There are layers and layers and layers of sexuality and how the mentality and the mind works along with it. It's not just the identification of, let's say, lesbian or gay. Without going further into it, I realized that I was different at a very early age. Maybe I was about 13 or 14, but wasn't very sure of how to deal with it. Luckily, by that time, internet had come to the surface, and there was dial-up, and there was internet at school and at home. So one had that advantage of reading up about it a little more, and made some friends or spoke to some others, some Yahoo chat rooms, and believe me or not, that's how it started for me to know more about this. And then by the time I was, let's say, 16, I decided to kind of tell my friends.
Louder.
Can you hear me now?
That's better.
By the time I was 15 or 16, I thought, let me just tell my parents about this. And the very natural, obvious response is, oh, it's a phase, and should we take you to a doctor? Oh, but what's wrong? We pray to God. Should we fast on Monday? Things like that. Obviously it didn't work, but yeah, they thought like, okay, maybe we should just do one more Ekadashi and Purnamasi fast, and you know, maybe the God will appease and fix this, but neither the God or the Goddess, if there is one. No, it didn't happen. Anyway, so that journey went along, and it's still going on, and I think it's been full circles now. I'm 30 years old, and finally they have come to terms with their own understanding of the subject of yes, there are kids with difference, and also I think I and Keshav are also of a generation when kids took this stand where we said no means no, we are not getting married. Marriage is not
I'm younger than you. I'm from another generation.
Yeah, he's very young, sorry. He's only 22. Doesn't look it, but he is. So,
I matured early, alright?
Oh, or, okay, well, we all hear about the injections. Anyway, so a lot of people I started meeting at the age of 17 and 18 at public events, and by that time some public events had started on the city calendar. There was this one little gathering in JNU, which is Jawaharlal Nehru University, where for the first time the student groups in about 2006, I think, if I'm not wrong, marched behind the gay rainbow flag. And a couple of years later, the first ever Queer Fest happened in Delhi, and then the Pride started. So lucky for me, I was around a time where I could identify with other queer people in the city, and they were there to kind of hold my hand and let me know I was not alone. Yeah, so that's my personal sort of coming out story, just relating with how it kind of moved along the city's demographic. Thank you.
I am the youngest out of 4 children. I have 3 sisters, and then my parents had me. You can imagine. You can imagine how the struggle was. But no, I think for me personally, I sort of was gay as soon as I came out of, or was plucked out of my mother's whatever. And I think it was just something like I found it just so natural at a very, very young age. I went to an all-boy Catholic school called St. Columbus in New Delhi. And even though it was a day school, not a boarding school, whenever we used to have a play, and this was when we were even very young kids, a nativity play or any of that, all the really fair boys, the white-skinned boys, were always made to play the girls' parts. So I was Mother Mary when I was in kindergarten. I was Sita also when I was in I think school, and all the way up till I was 15, 16 when I was graduating, I continued. So in the beginning they used to put you into the girls' part, and they were like sort of picked, and you were like, you will do the girls' part, and then later it started becoming elective, and I elected it, and my mom and my aunt used to help me get into blouses, and I used to wear my aunt's sari when I had to do the play up until grade 12. And it was just so normal. And then that, well, was my introduction to drag, of course. And since then, I've made a business out of drag in India. So, so from, you know, dressing up in drag, I sort of progressed and showed my mother the capitalist side of it. And now we do successful drag events in Kirisu for the last 1 year. In fact, we've got one of them who's here, who is a very successful drag queen in Delhi. And so yeah, I mean, for me it was always like just but natural. But it was something when I did tell my parents finally, when I did come out of the closet per se, in the beginning it was a little bit like, oh God, you know, it wasn't that easy, but that was almost 12 years ago, and this year I'm going to be getting married to my partner, who's French, and it's legal in France, and yeah, and we're going to live in India. I've been living with him for almost 10 years now, together in India, and so my parents and have come a long way. More importantly, I gotta say that my team is really something and people that just supported me, because it's, you know, it's not easy to be queer in any country, and then to be queer and a leader is a little more exaggerated, or there's a little more that is sort of a pressure that is put, especially, you know, when you're like the youngest of the 4 children. But my team has been so supportive of this, because it's not just drag that I'm doing. I've been doing many sensitivity trainings. We work with gender non-binary people. We've done, I personally have hired at least 4 to 5 transgender people in my team in Kirisu. I gotta say that my nightclub Kirisu has really pushed me to speak up more. And a lot of people ask me that why are you speaking up now and not earlier? And one of the reasons is because I think the world's turning into a very dark place. And I think that there are a lot of populist leaders out there who might say things that they don't mean. And I think we're also in a phase of, like you said, you know, the generation of we will stand up. So but there are counter voices out there, and I just want to be one of those counter voices. And what I'm doing, I mean, drag has been a very much big part of the Indian culture. We've had transgender goddesses and gods, Sikandi being one of them. So I mean, it's not something new. It's just that we kind of lost our way, and now we need to get back into it.
Very nice story.
So when you were just doing your NDBS, you were just looking at the physical body of people. Then gradually, as I took psychiatry as a specialization, people come and shared much more personal details with me than you would with a doctor. And as things would sort of progress, not only did, and in a way, the psychiatrists are sort of misfits in doctor community at times also, because there was a nice saying that what if everything fails? Talk to the person. No, a doctor can't do that. So then as I went more into psychological work and looking at non-medicinal ways of assisting people, supporting them, that's where I really came across working with a few people who had a gay orientation. I submitted that case for a psychotherapy, competition, and I got first prize in that. So I'm stating this because I was a bit surprised. I said, I do so many therapies, what was special about that one? And it was, oh no, you work with somebody's sexual orientation. And there was such misconceptions about being able to work with somebody with different sort of orientation. And then I further went, I was lucky that I've been able to be in Australia, where it's very, very different. You see a different world, you see how people are already having that conversation. We had a ridiculous but positive outcome of a yes vote, which went in favor of people making their choices the way they want to. I do have some ideas about the particular topic of today's discussion, which is starting the conversation. But we'll see when we come to that. Thanks so much.
So I'm most curious, I've been told it's really not okay to come out at work and be out, even in society, but also the workplace. So here. So, and I know the journey we've undertaken in the US to find our voice as a community, to find each other at work so that we can be a community, and then to galvanize around using that voice in the workplace to create better policies and benefits, right? Or get our company to support our community with real dollars and things like that. So where are we now in Indian society with the whole question of bringing your full self to work when it means I'm LGBT? Does it start with the family? Is that, like, what are the biggest barriers to progress? What is holding us back? And if you could wave your magic wand and say, is it laws? Is it corporations and employers? Is it society? What are the things that you would change in order to accelerate this? Because the bottom line is we've got to accelerate it. Yep. You know there are so many LGBTQ people hiding in the workplace today and in society. And it's not good for them. It's not healthy for them. And it's certainly not good for a company, because the bottom line is being impacted when people can't do their best work and feel they can be fully present. So what do you think the biggest things you would hope for legislatively, financially, etc., like in the next year?
Okay, so just imagine yourself on a summer day wearing 3 jackets, but not being able to take them off, because if you take them off, there's going to be something disastrous happening around. So it works the same way for LGBT people who are just constantly trying to maintain multiple personalities. Fear of coming out, fear of rejection, fear of being judged, and not knowing what comes next, the fear of unknown itself. Now imagine losing all those barriers and just being yourself. You are going to rev up your performance and just being you fully. If you're able to kind of transcend beyond all these barriers. Having said that, very, very quickly going through the legal scenario, I think the judiciary process has been in place since 2001. We even won. It's not illegal to be gay. The act of sex is identified as criminal. So it's not that if I say I'm gay, I'm a criminal. It's only when you're caught in the act of sex, and that too certain kind of sex is when, by the way, which applies to a lot of you. Oral sex means you are a criminal.
But I have a video of you.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh.
I'm the Paris Hilton of India.
Yeah, you know, that's the new bullying mechanism. So corporates, they do that, you know. Anyway, so where was I? I don't know. Yeah.
You're saying the law.
Yeah, so the judiciary process has been in place for 2001, and it's not illegal to identify as gay. It's illegal to be caught in the act of sex. Now, let's say I'm under the impression that, let's say, in about 6 or 8 months, it will be gone. The 377, section 377 of IPC will be gone because that is the final leg of the judicial process. But what next? What next? And to be very honest, when in 2009 the Delhi High Court decriminalized homosexuality in India, many more people came out, and that generation and that number of people who came out never went back into the closet when the Supreme Court changed it and upturned it in 2013. So the power of that law has been diminishing since. It's not the same. The bigger question to ask is, what is the signal we are sending out to a younger generation that, you know, is this a country where there is future for you? Because the legislative leg or the government has just blindsided this completely. They have refused to even acknowledge or comment anything about the subject. So even though the judiciary is on this process of decriminalizing homosexuality, we don't see any initiative or any talk from the government, you know, which even remotely indicates that, okay, there is a future for LGBT community, or you know, adoption or marriage or health insurance, or the very basic fundamental human rights, as we say. So we don't really know what is going to create that change. We don't even have one politician who identifies as LGBT in the country, you know, not one actor. So the stigma, anyway. So that's what I have to say.
I've got actually 3 things to say. One is that my sex video will be out right after this session, and then I will truly be the Paris Hilton of India. Yeah, that's how I made my money. That's how I made my money. No, the other 2 things is that one is education. I think this needs to go down into books. I think children need to understand the spectrums of sexuality, the spectrums of gender, because if you want true equality and gender agnosticism, which is something that I'm trying to work in my own company, where we want to look at the job and not the sex of the person, I think it has to go down to education in a big way. That is one of the reasons why I really am a big propagator of drag, because drag is something that actually says, hey, gender is a construct. It is a construct and a mechanism of control of inheritance, control of, you know, who can work power. That's what you know, gender is, and this needs to be taught in schools. That needs to change. Our mentality needs to change on that. And the other thing I want to say is that in our country, where we've been let down so many times by the judiciary and by the government, something that my parents taught me at a very young age, the real change makers of the country are entrepreneurs and are people that are going to go from top down. So don't wait for the government to change the law for you, do it yourself. So that's what I have done, at least in my company. So in my company, you are free to be whoever you want to be. I have hired many people from the LGBTQ community. Of course, with privacy law, you can't sit and ask a person, are you gay or are you straight? But you might, I don't do that. thank God, you know. But the thing is that I've got, you know, drag queens that can come to work in drag. My other drag queen was a permanent employee of mine in Bangalore. I do think that I want to touch a little bit upon what you said about representation. Yes, there has to be more representation. Having said that, the T of the LGBTQ, the transgender movement, has taken a lot of steam in India. And there is representation. There is a judge in West Bengal. There is a member of parliament who's actually transgender. Might not be a thing. There are you know, states in India that have recognized the third gender, and I just actually didn't know this, and I don't know if you guys know this, but when I went to change my photograph in the passport office, there was male, female, other. So that change is happening, but at the same time, it's not reaching. It's a huge population, guys. So you know, if we really want to make a change, then it has to go down into the schools. And if we really want to make a change, it has to be the entrepreneurs and the corporates that are Indian corporates that are waking up, smelling the coffee, and actually doing these programs like I am.
Yeah.
Quickly, my background. So I work as a psychiatrist. I lead a team of a specialist team which supports people who have mental illness as well as substance abuse. So you can understand that there's more and more complex presentations, and one of the complexities which we find is gender-related issues. I'm more a specialist to the mind, looking into how the mind works, understanding that if you look at the topic of the conversation, let's start the conversation. There's a book by Nassim Taleb where he beautifully captures this. The freedom of expression is actually an empty right, unless we get over our own hesitation and anxiety to speak. We are anxious because we don't really know, we don't really understand. And it is going to come from top to down as well as from bottom to top, of joining hands and making people aware about what is it, how is it so natural, how not to see it as an illness as it has been seen. And this is a scenario which I'm faced in my work also, because you know that new substances keep coming out every day. When a new substance comes out, there's suddenly a question to me as to, we don't really understand this, how do we manage this, oh, this is rising in our society, etc. What do we do about it? It's really important to take a step back and look at how, whenever concepts have changed, whenever new ideas have been introduced, what have been the success strategies? We are also looking into, yes, this has worked for me, and you are in positions of power, so you can say, I can do this in my organization, and that's so good. Also looking into the past, where you can learn from that. And getting people's anxiety down. So, you know, let's start the conversation is also, let's get the conversation started. There's that book about how to talk to kids so they may listen, and later they came up with another book, how to listen so kids may talk. So you've got to have it as a communication. You've got to understand the human mind will be anxious about anything it doesn't understand. Utilize those psychological strategies at an individual level. In my later presentation, I'll talk about how there are different layers of the mind which we need to get across to reach a person and to be able to bring down that anxiety, build up understanding. And that's, I think, a really good way forward. And I think that builds up a lot of hope also.
And it's hard to have hope when you look around and you don't see anyone who looks like you or that you have that in common with, right? So finding your voice is exponentially harder when you have no role models. And then, you know, you add the workplace to the equation, and it would go so far to see out executives. I'm sure that you make such a difference just by existing. I mean, it's such a big deal, honestly.
I don't know if my
They would agree. Yeah. They tolerate you sometimes, but there's other people. There's a million eyes on us all the time as leaders, and I think the choices. Somebody said the choice we make for the next generation. You said it really matters. You know, we might be a lost cause, and I never want to say that we are. We're not. But if you have a trouble being out and being true to yourself, all you need to think about is the next generation, and it really shifts the level of accountability, I think, that we have to live our truth and do it in a visible way. And trust me, like, I don't like to come out every single time I do a keynote, and I force myself to, because I need people to see what somebody in our community looks like. Like being an author, being a business owner, dressing the way that I do, expressing my gender in the way that I do, which is another